Well, hello, friends. Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. Welcome to Joe Boo Investigative Reports here, okay? This really has nothing to do with the Dallas Cowboys, but has everything to do with the Dallas Cowboys since we played the Washington football team. Oh, my God! The Washington Commanders away. We play the Washington Commanders twice with their new quarterback, Carson Wentz. I've gone through this morning. I've done my morning video, and while I was sitting here waiting for it to go up, I had a brain fart because there was a list of all of the picks that were given up for Carson Wentz, and as I was going through this long list, I remembered that there was another trade that the Eagles made before they made the trade with the Browns. And I was thinking it was Tampa Bay, but it was actually Miami. So while my video was uploading, I was going through and doing the research on this. And it was Miami because they gave up Kiko Alonso and another player and exchanged their first-round picks, the 13 for the 8, which they used along with a lot of others to go with the Cleveland Browns. And as I was doing that situation, I was doing another video where basically clowning, where it wasn't me clowning, it was me listening to other people clowning Washington for the trade and literally how fans are just like sick of this. But I remembered, because I started thinking about this, because this felt like deja vu. Deja vu. We've been here before. And I like to think of myself as a student of the game and I love history. Because if you don't learn from history, you are destined to repeat itself. And the Carson Wentz trade is history repeating itself again for the Washington Commanders away. This is so eerily the same, it literally blows my mind. Okay, so let's go back here. The Colts, unlike the Dallas Cowboys, are trashing Carson Wentz after they traded him. See, we trash the player before we try and trade him, which is why we can't ever trade anybody. So the Athletic, Zach Keffer, are reporting that the Eagles, the Eagles, there's so many teams, it's hard to keep up with them. The Colts traded Carson Wentz not so much for his play, but the frustration that they had dealing with him. The Colts were frustrated with Wentz's lack of leadership, resistance to hard coaching, reckless style of play. Some members of the organization were finished with him even before Indianapolis finished the regular season with consecutive losses to miss the playoffs. Mind you, one of those losses was to Jacksonville. The Colts agreed to trade Wentz to the Washington Commanders in exchange for 2 first-round picks, blah, blah. Okay, we all know that. But what led to him going to Indianapolis was allegedly he didn't talk to the coaches for months. He did not talk to Doug Peterson literally for months. The same things that the Eagles were saying about him are the same thing that the Colts were saying about him. And of course, Washington gets him. Where this goes is, this is Jeff George all over again. This is Jeff George. I know people always say, Mark Holmes, he just copies other people's work. I don't think anybody else out there has made this parallel connection here. Jeff George, cannon for an arm. Jeff George. What happened to Jeff George? Let's think about this. Jeff George was the numero uno pick in the draft. Number 1 pick in the draft. Just like Carson Wentz. Jeff George, let me go back to an article here. Jeff George could have been one of the best quarterbacks in recent memory. His rifle of an arm was his biggest asset. Regrettably, George came with excess baggage. He was brash and he butted heads with coaches, teammates, and fans. He was arguably the most important trait, that's the most important trait of a franchise quarterback, is leadership. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? butts heads with coaches, butts heads with fans, brash, headstrong, lots of baggage. Let's go a little bit deeper here with Jeff George, because Jeff George ended up being with the Colts originally, and literally had a hissy fit so he could get traded to the Atlanta Falcons. Carson Wentz had a hissy fit and got traded to the Colts. Let's go down a little deeper, because this is an old article. Clearly the Colts were placing their trust in George's cannon of an arm. Regrettably, it didn't work out the way George and the Colts had hoped. He eventually played 4 seasons in Indy, throwing for 41 touchdowns and 46 interceptions. The Colts also averaged just 5 wins per season with George as a starter. According to Wilson, Indy was 14-35 in those games. They also failed to make the postseason with George as their quarterback. There's no denying that George was a talented signal caller. However, he didn't get along well with anyone. In Wilson's words, George fought with everyone from the front office coach Ted Marchibroda, teammates and fans. Before the 93 kickoff season, George blasted the Colts, the city of Indianapolis, and the media. He also held out for 36 days so he could get traded to a different team. He eventually got his wish. The Colts traded him to, of course, the Atlanta Falcons for a first round and a third round draft pick. Let me say that again. A first round and a third round. The Eagles traded Carson Wentz for a first and a second. Is your mind blown yet? My mind's blown. So he ended up going to Atlanta, and that bombed out. Eventually, he came to Washington, just like Carson Wentz. We'll see if the parallels end up being the same, but let's say the time he spent in Washington wasn't really good. I'm trying to remember because I'm getting old. I'm going to go down here a little bit further, but he ended up blowing up on national TV with the coach, with June Jones. I remember there was something he said in Washington about not being a leader or something like that. Let me go down here real quick. I'm sorry, I didn't read the whole article, but it was just, the whole thing freaked me out. He ended up being a journeyman quarterback that literally played with Atlanta, Washington, the Raiders, Minnesota, and then finally ended up, unfortunately he did, okay. And I was satisfied hoping the thing that would work out with Jeff. This was Marty Schottenheimer. Jeff obviously had it worked and probably wouldn't be 0-2. I was in the mindset that as a teacher, I could teach him and he could understand. I didn't do a good enough job teaching him, and he didn't understand it. So the Redskins beat the Rams on Monday night. Jeff threw for 269 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's good. But I'm trying to remember, after he left Washington, he went to Seattle and then to the Bears. But there was a quote from him that was it's just like, this guy's an asshole. But we'll see. Maybe Carson Wentz can do better than Jeff George did in Washington. But then again, Washington is the place quarterbacks' careers go to die. You know how we roll, guys. I got work to do in the workshop, and just trying to bring you guys a taste and a little bit more insight and ammunition, of course, to go against those Washington Commanders fans. Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report.
You did one hell of a job, and the only thing else I got to say is, how about them Cowboys?